Hello and welcome. Today we are in the Tier 10 Soviet battleship Slava. What you just saw at the start is not going to happen in this video. However, it happened during my stream yesterday. Yeah, I know, right? I streamed and I figured I would like to share it with you guys. A casual 57k salvo on a Yamato to start out the match. Anyway, in this match we're going to do some tanking. However, I call it moderate tanking because at the time that I recorded this video, or played the match, I didn't actually know exactly what Slava is capable of in terms of tanking. You see, in yesterday's video, I mentioned that Slava isn't going to be very good at close range tanking, right? Because she has a 25mm bow and a 25mm stern, which means that it should be fairly easy for most battleships to be able to citadel her through the front, right? Wrong. You see, it turns out that Slava is slightly different than you would expect. When you look at the Montana's deck armor scheme, especially the bow or a Yamato's bow, you look at it and go, okay, 32mm, but then there's nothing until the citadel belt. It looks the same on the Slava. However, that's not actually the case. You see, Slava has a little bit of magic in it. It has this invisible magical armor plate at the front, apparently just like the Kremlin, by the way, which is about 350mm. We're not talking about the citadel armor plate. There is about the 350 citadel armor plate, and then a little bit in front of it there is an angled down armor plate that's another 350-ish millimeters. And something similar is going on the stern. Actually, the stern part is many ships have something like that at the back due to how the steering gear section works. But the main thing is the front part, because you would expect that a ship like Slava that gets her bow armor reduced to 25mm would be vulnerable at close range to citadels. Nope, not the case at all. This was told to me by iChase yesterday during the stream. I actually had no idea about this. And you can't see it in the armor viewer in-game either. You can only see it through game models or some kind of website like that, like this one. Remember, that is not the citadel armor plate. The citadel armor plate is about the same thickness behind there. And this armor plate basically makes it impossible to citadel the Slava from the front, because it adds up to so much armor thickness that nothing can penetrate that. Even a Shikishima at 1 kilometer could not do that. Nor a Republic or, well, basically anything else. And because of the way the armor is positioned, you can't really do a side armor plate penetration like you can on a Yamato's cheek either. Which means that in terms of citadels, you don't have to worry about it. You can get as close as you want against anything. As long as you don't show broadside, they're not going to citadel you. Now, they will get penetrations though. And these penetration damages will definitely add up. But they're not going to citadel you. You don't have to worry about it, unlike Yamato. Which is actually quite disconcerting, because I thought the weakness of the Slava was going to be the fact that if you push into her, she doesn't have nearly as many options anymore. But I expected that she would have to do the tanking like I am right now, where you can see that I am showing quite a bit of side to the enemy. The idea behind this is that if they fire at me, they're going to try to hit my citadel section, right? However, because I am so angled, they will be unable to penetrate my citadel. They will either bounce off or simply be unable to penetrate. And I think this is a completely valid way of tanking. You do this quite often if you're in a cruiser and are pushing into a battleship at close range. You want to show side so that they hit your side but are unable to actually do damage to you. And I figured you would have to do something like that, but apparently I was wrong. And I was quite annoyed by this. I have made this video a few times at this point, and the first few I was somewhat cross. So I tried again until I seemed slightly more amicable. So anyways, Here in this match, as you can see, it's a 9 versus 9, and we're obviously winning already, but we're still dealing with battleship fights. And as you can see, there's only one other well, actually there's two battleships technically here. It's the Yamato and the Grosse Kaufest, but I'm already at 1.6 million potential damage. And most of those salvos are not by cruisers. That Grosse Kaufest on the western side of the map seemed to really like shooting me. But because of the way I am angled, I am not taking too much damage. I'm still taking damage, but not quite as much as I am dishing out. And I think that's something completely viable for a Slava, although I think my angle should be slightly better. It's mostly that I don't have to worry about the Kremlin because I don't think she's gonna push out too soon. Now, something to point out is that in terms of gameplay, I think priority target is very important here, because if I'm not targeted by anything with priority target, I know nobody is actually able to shoot me, right? Because nobody is looking at me. Which means that I will get knowledge of anybody even looking at my ship every time. And this is kind of something I don't understand when players say they don't think priority target is useful or don't take it on a battleship or cruiser or whatever. They'll say something like, oh, I'll just assume I'm always, being fired upon. But that's not actually true, right? Because you don't have to actually... Not every ship that's detected is being fired upon, and if you constantly act as though you are being fired upon even when you aren't, then that's just, I think you're going to play in a way which is not going to be conducive to victory as often. Anyway, the reason I want to sit in the middle, though, is because this allows us to have some form of crossfire. I mean, you've seen me get a fair bunch of citadels here already, and that Yamato is firing on me, which I do hope I'm not gonna take too much damage from, but because I keep playing with my throttle back and forth, I have the propulsion mod. It does enable me to avoid many of these shells. Anyway, I'm trying to basically have some kind of a crossfire. Now, my movement does make me vulnerable to the Grosse Kaufest on the other side, but considering there's a Moskva and a Montana approaching her, I think she has her hands full with something else right now. But essentially, I want to be in the middle, because as you can see, no other battleships are actually here right now. Which means that we get some slightly more crossfire from this. Slava is very good for this, because she is accurate even at range, which means that she is very good at setting up potential crossfires. Now the Grosse Kaufest is sailing towards me, and the enemy, or the allied Yamato, has already gone down that was next to the GK. Which means that sometime soon I will want to basically swap places with the GK. The GK will come more towards me, well, probably she'll actually sail more towards where the Conqueror is, but she'll be in the same direction. And I will want to go where the GK is. That's mostly just because I expect that GK is going to do that, and I don't want all of our battleships, well, other than the Montana, to be in the same spot. Because that way we don't have the angle or the threat of angles to the enemy. Here's where Slava's very good concealment, or at least decent concealment for a tier 10 battleship, comes in. I can go and do that. I can sail broadside onto the enemy if they actually cannot see me. But for now, GK is still in a decent enough position, although with the Kremlin pushing out, I think I'm gonna start leaving too. Because if they do actually do a proper push, I don't want to be caught out alone. And since all my allies are actually leaving, I would be alone. I'm basically taking whatever shots I can, because right now nothing is broadside to me. I will simply have to reposition. I mean, overall, match-wise though, we're in a good position. I don't think it's possible for us to really lose this. Because we have so many more ships and we have 2 cap zones. We're gonna win in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So here I'm gonna sail empty, as in I'm not gonna do anything. I'm simply going to be in stealth to reposition. This requires patience, by the way. And hey, now we're in a slightly better position, and because of where the Montana is, the Yamato is not angling against me. And as a result, I should be able to penetrate her side pretty easily. See? A citadel hit. Kremlin isn't showing sign, but Yamato... Oh, Yamato's turning in. And the Montana went down, so there is no threat from that angle anymore, which means that I need to open the angle even wider. Luckily, the Grossakofest is going north, so me going south, we will create an angle between the two of us. Now there is one problem though, there is a Yueyang somewhere in my area, that is an allied Yueyang, and this means that the enemies are likely going to point their noses somewhere in my direction simply to be able to avoid torpedoes. However, I hope they'll simply forget that the Yueyang exists at some point soon. Maybe? Well, we're probably not going to be that lucky, but hey, maybe they'll mess up for a little bit, or think that Yueyang has already blown her load, so it'll be fine. By the way, the reason I say that in all chat is to make them actually do something, the enemy that is, so that they open more of their broadsides to me, so that I can fire upon them and deal more damage. Well, slightly more than that one. 4k is not quite what I would expect to deal here. The other thing though is that because I'm on their side, it takes some effort for them to actually try to shoot back at me, because they would have to either turn their ship or the turrets, and all of that takes time. And meanwhile, if I wanted, I could simply fall into concealment. So flanking is very, very nice, and the fact that Slava isn't actually nearly as vulnerable going close range, that she doesn't have to worry about being citadeled from the front or the stern, she can actually much more safely do these kinds of flanking maneuvers, but you definitely don't want to be caught out showing full broadside to the enemy. That's usually a recipe for a disaster. But Yamato is showing a lot of broadside here, plus the torpedo, so GG! $207k damage, 7 citadels, 96 shell hits. So overall, my opinion of the Slava really hasn't changed. I do think the ship is obviously more powerful now that I know that she can't be citadeled from the front, or stern. However, I still think she is going to be bad for the game, because I don't think players are going to tank too much with her. They will simply just want to stay further away, and I still think it's bad for the game. Here, by the way, you can see, I mentioned last time I had about the 50% accuracy. 96 shell hits, 198 shells fired. And I did engage at decent ranges most of the time. I mean, this is pretty damn good. And 2.6 million potential with 95k damage taken and most of that AP. So you saw, I mean, Kremlin fired 12 AP shells at me and she only did 6k damage. So you can definitely angle and tank in various ways with the ship. So yeah, I'm really annoyed by this magic armor plate, but there just isn't that much I can do. Besides, it turns out that quite a few ships have something like this, just most of them don't have something quite as prominent as this one. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I would like to thank the patrons on Patreon. Thank you very much for your continued support, and I hope I'll see you guys next time.